Hello and welcome to Super Respectable. My name is David Lewis, and with me is the fearless co-host Tosh Rahman. Tosh, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm keeping it together
Yeah,
despite the deteriorating situation here. Everything is fine and dandy.
yeah.
Yeah. How's life in Istanbul?
It's okay. A friend of mine asked me today. He lives in Malaysia. He was asking me like, how's the situation? And like Halima and I were talking about it. My wife and I were talking about it a couple of days ago. I think it's not great here, but nobody says anything and just keeps living their life because it can't be horrible around the world and not in one country. You know what I mean? So uh, so I think the numbers are not great, but people live their lives as normal. But everyone wears masks. So there you go.
That's nice.
What about in the NL in the Netherlands?
In
Has
the NL, I think as I've been saying over the previous weeks, the trend gets worse and worse. And yeah, the past few days we've been hitting 10,000 cases a day, which is quite
Damn.
astonishing. Population of 17 million, getting the same numbers as Germany, which has 82, 83 million. So that's a bit crazy. So the ICU, intensive care units in the Netherlands are getting full, and they're having to ship off patients to Germany.
No way.
Now, Belgium is getting so busy with the ICU that they wanted to ship their patients to the Netherlands. The Netherlands said no.
Wow. What's leading to the sharp rises in the Netherlands? Are people gathering in ways they're not supposed to? Are they coming from overseas? Like, what's the sharp rise attributed to?
Um, well, with my non-medical background, this is just my own view from the streets. I guess school's back in session. People had
Yeah.
their holidays. They came back, and it just boom hit the population for the second wave. And people were going out to drink. The bars were pretty busy, and yeah, since they sort of closed the bars, restaurants, and cafes, they were hoping to see kind of a possible turnaround in the numbers, but it doesn't look like that's happening. So um, it might be more draconian level measures to come.
Wow.
So
It's everywhere in the States and in the UK. I think the last week, they had some of the highest numbers since I don't know about the UK, sorry, but in the States, they had, on one day, they had like 80,000 people, which was like, excuse
oh,
me, which was,
good sneeze. You sneezed into your elbow, which is
thank you.
very
Sorry, like
correct.
I prevented the spread. 80,000 people, which is like the highest number, like I think since the pandemic started or ever, but that's insane numbers, so I, uh, I don't know. Everyone listening, please wear your masks, limit interaction 6 feet apart, sanitize, follow the rules.
I went to the cinema yesterday.
No way. Did you?
Yeah.
What did you watch? How was it? Tell us your experience.
Oh, well, the thing is that there's not many movies out. I thought a lot of things are going straight to Netflix or Amazon or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I went to see a French movie, which is very good.
Yeah.
But it was just four people total in the cinema.
Yeah.
So I really don't see how they make any money. They couldn't buy popcorn, couldn't buy Coke. It was really kind of a nice private experience,
Yeah.
but not one that a commercial entity should be undertaking.
Was it like, did you have your mask on the entire time, or because you had no one around you, you took it off?
I wasn't at first, but when another couple came in, I put a mask on and I kept it on the whole time.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's
but
crazy.
it was crazy. Yeah. So
I haven't gone to the cinema yet. I don't think I will, but it's good to know. You're the first person I've met who's actually like who I know who's gone, and so would you go back if another fantastic French movie came out?
yeah, well, I'm basically thinking, why don't I just try and watch every single movie that's out in the next week? Because there's a high chance that we'll get locked down soon. So might as well enjoy some arts and entertainment
Yeah,
while we
and
can.
back home in our native country, this Saturday is Halloween, right? So I wonder how COVID and Halloween will go hand in hand.
Halloween is banned.
No Halloween this year.
There shall be no fun.
There shall be no fun. It's yeah, to all our listeners outside of, I guess, North America, pretty much, Halloween is the holiday where kids pretty much dress up and beg for candy from house to house. It's really weird.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that because the topic for this episode
Yeah.
is slightly, is fear related. I thought, it's Halloween this week, so I
Okay.
thought I'd talk about something scary.
Yeah.
So I spent some time yesterday looking into, murder mysteries, haunted house stories, and I thought, yeah, that's been done a lot. A lot of podcasts talk about these murder things a lot. So I was doing a bit of digging into Wikipedia,
Yeah.
and then I came across the Wikipedia page for phobias.
Phobias. That's nice. I like it.
So I thought for this Halloween episode, we could talk about some of our fears.
Yeah.
I know you're pretty fearless, as we've discussed, but I'm sure there's some things that get you going.
Yeah.
And then I can, talk about some of the more interesting and unusual phobias that people have, some of which I've never heard of. And
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can be afraid of things, but who am I to judge, right?
Yeah, I think you probably know more than I do, but there are phobias for everything out there, right? And there's names for some of them. There's names for not of them. There's no names for some of them, but there are people who are scared of this and that. And so it'll be an interesting episode. I think it's a good topic, very timely. So
Yeah. So I'm really not one to be able to give us some sort of discourse on the history of Halloween.
yeah.
It's like you've already summarized it. It's kids go around knocking on neighbors or strangers' doors and demanding candy.
Yeah.
No one ever asks for a trick. They say trick or treat.
Yeah.
But I don't think was ever asked to do a trick.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a strange one.
When we first moved to Canada, earliest in my memory, we came from Japan, where Halloween does not exist. So a few years in, my parents started learning more about what it was, and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember, I have one memory is that when I was a kid, I remember we were invited to like a family party. You know what I mean? Like at a community center or something. So like no one would be at home giving out candy. We all have to have this party. So my mom, being the sweet lady she is, puts all the candy in a bowl outside the house with a note that says, "Take one each."
Just take it. Yeah.
And so we go to this party, and when we come back, not only has all the candy disappeared, but the bowl has also disappeared as well. So someone took the bowl, and the next day, for some weird reason, I found the bowl in our neighbor's bushes as well. So that gave us a lesson: never trust kids.
Yeah, just don't be nice. Yeah, I have an interesting Halloween story involving my family as well. So my parents moved to Canada from the UK in the 1970s.
Right.
And Halloween's a bit more of a thing in the UK these days because of globalization and the spread of such interesting holidays.
Yeah.
But back then it wasn't a thing at all.
Totally.
And I think when they moved, I'll try and get the story right, but when they moved, it was around late October. They moved to like somewhere in New Brunswick, a rural part of New Brunswick.
Yeah.
And shortly after settling into their new accommodation, it was Halloween night, and they had these kids show up dressed in costumes demanding candy. And my parents thought, this is the most bizarre thing. Like, what is wrong with this country? Is this some sort of Canadian initiation that they do the new neighbors? Like, I thought this was supposed to be a nice country or friendly people. And these kids are just coming around saying, give me candy.
Yeah.
So that was quite an interesting cultural experience for my parents when they arrived.
It's a unique thing to experience, and it's a very unique thing to describe if you're not really accustomed to it. But it's coming up on Saturday, and I wonder what'll happen. I guess you can't really gather at all. You can't really touch people or talk to people. So there might be like a distance Halloween, or maybe parents will just give their kids a bunch of candy and let them stay home, you know?
Yeah, I think the whole handing over of candy is not so COVID friendly. So
totally.
Yeah, I think the official advice in Ontario is stay home, eat whatever's in your fridge and in your cupboards, and enjoy that.
Yeah, it's a tough time.
So, anyways, let's talk about some phobias. Do you have any?
Am I scared of anything? Like existential phobias or like real phobias?
We've been like this year we've been afraid the world was going to end, so I
Yeah,
guess that's kind of a thing.
I have a
Um,
sure. I'll give you one real one and one like one in my mind, like a mental one and a real one. I don't like snakes at all. I don't know what the Latin uh, phrase
that's
would be.
called that's called ophidiophobia.
Ophidiophobia.
That's
I'm
what you have.
ophidiophobic, very much so. It's a no-no for me.
You and
And
Indiana Jones.
me and Indiana Jones. If you ever watch that movie, I think it's Temple of Doom, right? And the first one, when he falls and he's like face to face with the snakes, there's actually a piece of glass between him and them, and you can
No
see
way.
you can see the reflection because it was made in
Ah,
like 1980 or whatever. So I'm scared of snakes. I just don't like them. I've never had a bad experience or anything. I'm not a big fan of it. I try to stay away. I don't touch them. I don't pet them. I don't think you know how sometimes on the Discovery Channel they're like, if it's red, yellow, and black, you're okay. But if it's black, red, and yellow, then you have a date. Like I don't know any of that stuff. I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. No
yeah.
snakes in my area. And then my other phobia is I have a phobia of like it's like semi OCD sometimes. Like did I lock the not a phobia? Sorry, it's like I have a fear that I didn't do something. You know what I mean? So it's sort of OCD and sort of phobia. So like sometimes I'll be like, oh, maybe I didn't lock the door and then someone will break into the house, or maybe I didn't like turn off the stove and it'll do it. And I don't know if you can classify that as one or the other or a combination, but I kind of classify it in the middle. You know what I mean? Like
Huh.
not only that I didn't do anything, but a result of that something could happen. But it's not like it's not detrimental in my life or anything. It's just sometimes that I fear that.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a category for that one, but I'll try and add to the Wikipedia
No problem.
entries here.
What about you? What are your phobias?
Um, well, just to bounce off here is the snake one. I don't think I'm really that afraid of snakes because I'm from Canada.
Yeah.
Because the snakes, as far as I'm aware, that I've came across in Ontario,
Yeah.
were harmless. Canada is not like Australia where every other thing can kill you.
Yeah.
So the snakes I came across at people's cottages were, you know, I didn't really think anything of it. But when I started thinking about if I came across a snake in somewhere in Africa or Asia or Australia, I'd probably be a bit more afraid. But on
Yeah.
that subject of animals and insects, I'm definitely afraid of. I have arachnophobia,
Spiders.
spiders, and
Yeah.
it just insects in general, like bigger ones,
They gross me
like
out too.
things, just big ones.
Yeah.
That scares me a lot. Um, I don't know. I don't have a fear of like I have a fear of heights. I would say like if I'm climbing. When I was in Italy, we went hiking and we were
Yeah.
doing some pretty big heights. And yeah, I think there is a limit. Some people don't have that kind of fear. I don't know if you've seen that documentary of the climber who goes up.
Yeah. On
Is it
he was
Half
saying
Dome or El Capitan?
El Capitan, like one of those
One of those
Apple.
two. And they scanned his brain, and it shows that like he doesn't have the normal fear gauge that regular humans have, and he can just do these things. I would freeze. They would need to call a helicopter or someone to get me out of there. So
Is that a natural response from the brain, or is that like a decision to like for example Alex, right? Alex Honnold, the
Arnold,
climber.
yeah,
Yeah, is that something like you think he just naturally does not have that part of the brain like functioning, or is it he's decided to ignore that part of the brain?
I don't remember exactly how it went because they kind of explained it in the documentary, but it seemed like he had been doing it for. He was either born with it,
Yeah,
or he'd been doing it for so long that he was able to control it, and his brain became aware that this didn't need to be a thing, that it should alert the rest of the body that this is a danger and concern and should seize up.
yeah,
Because he's done it so many times that it became sort of like a muscle memory.
yeah.
Yeah, don't
What
know.
what are some of the other interesting ones you came across? Ones you didn't know?
There's so many, and a lot of them are hard to pronounce.
No
So
problem.
let's just go through some of the ones here.
Give us the
Uh,
highlights. Give us the ones that you like.
Um, so there's a couple. There's one that's very good for COVID times. It's called autophobia. It's the fear of isolation.
Isolation.
So COVID is not good for autophobics.
Is this auto like isolation? People can like we need to socialize with others. Is that related to it? Or we need to be around others?
I don't know. It doesn't explain it very well. Problem is, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole of clicking on it, and then I'll end up in a totally different thing. So
Yeah.
it just says fear of isolation. So
I've heard of people who need to be around other people. They can't be alone, and if they're alone, it's really kind of disturbing for them. Whereas I've met also people who are very much the opposite, who love being alone, and they like it's not that they don't fear people, but it's interesting. There's like two different spectrums for the on the same gauge, but autophobia. That's cool.
yeah. Then there's the one, the fear of books.
No way.
Bibliophobia. So
Bibliophobia.
I have never met a person who has some sort of visceral reaction to a book. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of strange. I don't know where the fear would come from. Like, how would you be traumatized by a book?
Maybe you've read bad books or you don't have experience with books. So you'd be if you had bibliophobia, you'd be a bibliophobe. Bibliophobe.
Yeah, yeah. Or you could be bibliophobic, because then you don't like people who like books.
Yeah.
Possibly.
That would be the one of the worst. Books are so awesome.
What else do we have? There's chromophobia, the fear of colors.
Really?
So it looks like based on for our people who are listening just purely on the audio podcast, Tosh is in a white room. So I'm going to ask Tosh, do you have any kind of mild form of chromophobia?
No. I think I'm okay. If I had it, what would be the problem? Like I would not like any colors. Like white would be okay.
It's a persistent irrational fear or aversion to colors.
So yeah, I guess white's not really a color, right? So white would be the standard, the default that you would go to, I'd assume.
Yeah, it must be a particular color. Like it can't be all colors. I mean, maybe someone's afraid of red because it's connected to blood or something like that. So they don't want to be any red rooms.
Yeah. Well, when you talked about that, I kind of thought about people who are colorblind who can't see colors. For some reason, I linked those two things together. But did the fear of a color? That's interesting because you can't control like when you interact with colors, right?
Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm already like scanning the Wikipedia pages. It's just too funny.
Give us the funniest one that you came across, or the one of the funny ones that you think.
Domatophobia.
Okay, I'm going to guess. The fear of tomatoes.
It's the fear of houses.
Houses?
How would you function in society? I don't understand that.
That's weird. I wonder, do you think, okay, I have a question for you. Do you think that like more and more of these phobias are coming to light, like, or being manifested nowadays, like in 2020, 2010, like in nowadays when people are a little bit more kind of like, this is 100 years ago, people would be like fear of houses. What the hell? And nowadays we're sort of like accepting of all these different like mental illnesses and fears. Do you think we're more open and so that contributes to more phobias?
Well, I think people like giving a name to something because it's, gives increased income to people who get paid for that sort of thing to diagnose and.
Oh, totally. I think part of this is, I don't want to give away mental health is real. It's when people need help. But sometimes I think like maybe it's a cash grab for certain professionals in the industry as well. Like, how do you treat a phobia of houses? Do you go into as many houses as possible until you're not scared? Do you build houses? Do you draw houses? Do you talk about what happened in a house? Where were you born and where do you live?
Where were you born? Yeah.
You don't live inside? Because I met, I'll tell you something funny. I met a kid who is really weird. He was scared of failure, but not on just like verbally, you know what I mean? So much so that like growing up, it was a friend of mine. Growing up, it was like always A pluses, and his mind couldn't fathom anything less than an A plus or doing good in sports. And like it was to the point where it was like you could see disturbance in his body when he like something started not going in his way, right? And I don't know what the name for that is, but it's like he did it. And I just started thinking like when you were saying this, is that when we have a phobia, it doesn't mean like our life is ruined. We just have to either live with it or kind of avoid it, right? Like if I'm afraid of spiders, I just like if I see a spider, my life is not coming to an end. It's just that I just don't like spiders and I'm scared of them, right? So either I get over it or I just live with it. Yeah.
But if you have the domatophobia, that's
Hmm.
one you just can't get over.
Yeah, because
You
there's no other
just have
option.
to address it or live in a tent or something.
Could you live in
Um,
an apartment and because it's not a house, like it's not a physical house?
yeah, yeah, you could live in an apartment, I think, but
That's
not a
so weird.
house. But maybe
Uh,
there's an apartment phobia called I don't know what the
how do
Latin
they?
root would be.
Did you come across like what how they diagnose phobias generally speaking? Like, what do you think? Like, even in your opinion, is it you have to be medically diagnosed for what a phobia is, or do you diagnose yourself?
Maybe it's a bit like an allergy. So like I have foods and things that I know I have reactions to, but I've
Yeah,
never been diagnosed with anything. But
yeah,
if I had something so crippling, like I had some sort of attack from having peanuts or something, then for sure you'd go and get a full test. So maybe it's the same with these phobias. Like if you like saw a house one day, you just collapsed on the ground and started like foaming, then you should probably see a doctor.
yeah,
But
and get an EpiPen as soon as
again,
possible.
EpiPen, you just jab them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Phobia. That's interesting. What
um,
else? What else? What other funny? What other ones did you highlight?
Uh, well, I'm just sort of scanning the Wikipedia page just because honestly, there's some that just there's one called the fear of bridges,
Oh
and the
yeah, yeah.
problem is a lot of them I can't pronounce it. The fear of bridges is gephyrophobia.
Is that
Um,
what's is that mostly when you add the Latin?
I imagine that it's all uh, Lat. Oh, it's Greek origin
Oh, Greek.
because bridge gephura is bridge,
Yeah.
and phobos is fear. Um,
Oh, interesting.
I'm not afraid of bridges. I'm afraid of bridges that are rickety and haven't been maintained, the ones in Quebec.
Yeah.
Um, but nope, I'm going to skip
But
that one.
if you were on a rickety Quebec bridge, you would still cross it if you had to, no?
Yeah, I mean, I
After
don't
doing
know.
your due diligence, after making sure like you would get across or whatnot, like
Well, the ones in Quebec were like if you drove from Ottawa to Montreal,
right.
you would see, I think they maybe have fixed them up lately, but you would see kind of um, I don't know what it's called. I don't have the engineering term, but it's just the bar that holds the whole thing together. You can see it exposed,
Yeah.
and because the cement had crumbled away, there was kind
Yeah.
of corruption in the building process,
Yeah.
and you're like cars are driving over that all day long. And I remember reading
Totally.
reports and being like, the province's infrastructure is collapsing, and it, like going into Montreal, the major city, one of the
Yeah.
biggest cities in Canada,
Yeah.
that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a fear every time. I said, "Dad, accelerate, drive fast. Just we're
Just
getting into
go.
Montreal. Just speed up."
Yeah, that's crazy. Fears. I think it's a especially like the topic is so timely because on Halloween we kind of it's like a little bit of fear does come into it, a little bit of phobias as well, right? I guess they play it up a little bit, right? Because it's a spooky night, and so if you're scared of spiders, there's a ton of spiders around in most haunted houses, ghosts. What's that? The fear of like the after fear of death, fear of goblins and ghouls.
Fear of death or the dead is necrophobia.
Yeah, necrophobia.
So I guess
That's
that makes sense.
I think that's. Do you know, like for example, what do you think? Like, just it's not to be statistic. If you're going to ask, like, you said you're scared of spiders, and I said I'm scared of snakes. I think that's pretty common, right?
Yeah, I think there's probably a list of top 10 fears, and like fear of public speaking for sure is a big one. I would
Yeah,
say I have that from time to time, depends on the
yeah,
audience and the subject.
yeah,
Um, fear of public speaking, fear of the dark, fear of death, fear of flying must be a big one.
yeah,
I know a lot of people who, well, not a lot, but a handful of people who are terrified of flying. And a
yeah.
lot of airlines, it's obviously in their interest, they offer these courses to help people get over their fear of flying.
Really? I've never heard
And
of that.
it's a free service, like British Airways offers it. I think EasyJet does it too.
Do you
And
know how it operates? Like how it works? So you take the course like online or in person or?
I think you would go to like Heathrow Airport, and first off, they would like do a presentation and say, try and give you a rational explanation about why you're scared. Then you would go sit on a plane that's not going anywhere, like on a cockpit somewhere, just
Yeah.
get comfortable in that feeling. Then possibly they also go into like a simulator on the ground, and it moves a little bit. And then they could eventually combine the two to ease them into it.
I have a Heathrow I'm afraid of Heathrow Airport in London.
Oh yeah.
It's too big for me. Well, that's crazy. Do you think? Have you met? It's a funny one. Have you ever met anyone who's scared of clowns? That's a common.
That's one I don't understand. I don't
Yeah.
understand that one, because I do know some people who are afraid of clowns.
Yeah.
And I don't know what came first, the Stephen King book, or like, is that the cause of the fear, or was it there before?
I don't know. I'm not scared of clowns. I don't like them, but I'm not scared of them. But like, for example, if I was stuck in a room with one and he didn't take off his wig and makeup, I would get upset.
I guess it depends on the context. If I saw a clown just doing that, I'd be a bit freaked out and say, "What are you doing, buddy?"
Well, in Stephen King's book / movie, it's a really great analysis of fear because have you seen it or read it?
I haven't. No.
It's Pennywise, the name of the clown. He plays on people's fears, on kids' fears. So for each kid, he includes or incorporates that person's fear when he interacts with them. So for one kid, it's like the fear of getting sick, and another one, it's like the fear of like blah 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 blah, like bugs and death, and then like stuff like that. So that's how he plays on it, and then in the end, they find a way to like overcome the clown. So fears are very motivating force in that story.
Fear of clowns. Coulrophobia.
Coulrophobia.
Yeah, Coul. That's a strange one.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can't say I have the fear of clowns. I went to a lot of circuses as a kid, and I saw them. I never really was freaked out by them.
Yeah.
What? Here's
sorry,
one for this evening is magarocophobia. Magarocophobia. That is the fear of cooking.
Oh, cooking. Yeah, you're scared of cooking. I wonder why someone would be scared of cooking. Like,
so I read that entry, and it's basically someone had a trauma. They probably burned the kitchen down, the house down, or they poisoned someone or themselves, or they just like didn't have good experiences from cooking, and so they just have a fear of it. And
do you think can you have fears of certain types of food? Do you think, or you just don't? Or would it be considered more like I just don't like these certain types of food? What's the difference between liking fears, not liking and fears?
There is a fear that's a fear of food.
Yeah.
But there's one that's the fear of fats in food, but there's none that are like specific to like fear of chocolate or something like that, as far as I'm aware.
I wonder what the line is between disliking something and fears, or fears and just being like OCD over something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a hard one too. I think there's definitely an OCD element to people's supposed fears.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there's people in the pandemic who are, germaphobes.
Totally.
Which is a phobia.
Totally.
But then there's certainly a OCD element to that phobia, where they're just compulsively cleaning everything around them all the time.
Well, you mentioned at the beginning and now the pandemic, and I think this is a really unique time to be talking about phobias, because I think all this free time that people have has really fostered their phobias and their mental incapacities, in the sense that they have all this free time, they have nothing to do, they're getting like bogged down by what's happening outside, they're just getting frustrated, and then at that point they're just like really kind of diving into the brain, which I don't think, by the way, is too healthy either. I think a balance is needed. Too much alone time, too much time with others, too much this, too much that, but too much thinking can also be a problem, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's no phobia of overthought.
Oh no. Okay. Overthought.
No. But another strange one is the numerophobia.
Numbers?
A fear of numbers.
Well, it's like that's crazy. So you don't deal with numbers?
I think I might have a fear of numbers if they're presented to me in the form of math homework.
Oh,
then that's more an aversion than a fear. I don't have the kind of,
yeah.
yeah, I don't get
Well,
afraid.
here's a good question for you. One day your child comes to you and is like, "Dad, I'm scared of numbers in math form, just like you." Are you like, "No, my kid's just trying to get out of doing his homework," or "No, he's inherited my numerophobia"?
Yeah, I would say, son, it's important to face your fears
Yeah,
and confront them head on
yeah.
and go for it until it
What
becomes too much.
and then you can. How do you? What do you think about confronting your fears? I think it's a very brave thing to do, generally speaking. Do you like? What are your thoughts? Do you think people can confront them? Do you think you can really overcome fears, or some things just no, lifelong?
Yeah, I think for some people, they have a fear of a
Overcoming
certain
fear.
thing that maybe they've never tried or never
Yeah,
done. And then with like coaxing and encouragement or just being exposed to it, they'll realize it was just irrational and something that they saw on TV or read about and they built up in their head.
yeah,
So those ones I think are okay to address. But then there's ones which are just like possibly based on a lived experience, trauma. And those are ones which would be like really problematic in addressing, where I would think that trying to do the typical thing of like re-exposing that person to that trauma would be possibly damaging, and it's maybe better to avoid it.
to avoid it. Yeah, that's a good reply. I think
Yeah,
so. Huh.
yeah.
Interesting. What are some of the other interesting ones you came across? Give us
Um,
two more good ones.
two more. Yeah. Uh, It's just so funny. There's one called ophthalmophobia. Ophthalmophobia. It's the fear of being stared at.
Oh, because optimal. Opto is the Greek
Yeah,
for
yeah.
eyes, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or
But that's
vision.
one where I wouldn't be like, I'm not afraid. I just don't like being stared at. So
Yeah,
are you really afraid of it?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, me too. I don't like being stared at either, but I'm not afraid of it. I think some of these things might be on that category of like dislike, aversion, fear. You know what I mean? Things I don't like, things I try to avoid, things I'm scared of. Maybe they overlap.
yeah, and this is Wikipedia, so maybe someone just sort of made up the word and found some Greek root and then threw it up here. It hasn't been taken down yet. So
Yeah,
take this with a grain of salt, as they
sure.
say. Here's one for the hipsters. It's called pogonophobia. That's the fear of beards.
Beards, like human
Yeah,
beards.
I
Oh,
don't think you can really be you couldn't really be afraid of my beard. So then you must have a severe case of pogonophobia if you were afraid of something like this. Um,
In your experiences, what are some of the tech? I'm imagining that overcoming any phobia probably follows at the beginning the same kind of steps, right? Like maybe like if you went to a therapist or a psychologist, they probably want to know more. They probably want to see where it stemmed from. Maybe do some like different types of therapies, you know. But like if you were afraid of beards and you were the therapist, how would you treat a patient? Like touch as many beards as possible. Grow a beard.
yeah, I would start, I guess, maybe showing them some pictures of beards and seeing which ones they have reactions to in particular. So maybe they could separate the problem into a category and say, oh, you're not afraid of beards, you're afraid of a particular person who had a beard.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
I think
there's a lot of evil people who had mustaches, right? So like Hitler and Stalin had some pretty notable mustaches.
yeah,
So I can understand a fear of mustaches.
Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin had very well, okay. He seemed like a pretty nice guy, so I guess that's
I don't know.
an
He never
example.
talked, so I don't know what's up with him.
No, he had a very famous clip of where he explained about the evils of fascism and war and conflict. I don't
Understand.
remember which movie that is, but I recommend looking it up. It's very interesting to hear Charlie Chaplin talk. He's a very well spoken dude.
Do you think a lot of fears come from like childhood experience or some bad interaction,
Oh
and then
yeah,
that's it. That's the starting point.
and I don't know what it is. Like things that happen to someone during childhood
Always stick with you.
can be scarring and it'll stay with you. Whereas when you're an adult, you can kind of like brush things off more or take it in stride or have a more measured approach. But for some reason, if the same thing happened to you when you were 6 or 12 or something, it can have a lasting impact. And I don't know if it's because your brain's still developing and it's like teaching you about the world and saying like this is a danger for the rest of your life, and because it was so bad,
Yeah.
it was like your first exposure to it. Um, yeah, that's a tough one.
Do you think fear is different culturally, like around the world or from different
Absolutely.
regions? Right?
I I had we had dogs growing up
Yeah.
at our parents' place in Ottawa, and they were just very docile Springer Spaniels.
Yeah.
Um, but when we had some of my classmates over to my house in high school, some
Yeah.
people were really afraid of dogs, and
Yeah.
the people who tended to be more afraid than others were people who came from I think Islamic or Middle Eastern countries,
Yeah. Like
because there seems to have been some sort of association with a dog of um, I don't know,
I think
danger.
Yeah, I think culturally speaking, the Middle East, Asia, Southeast Asia, they're not really dogs are not as common, and when they are, they're not really seen as pets at home. So I think
Yeah.
they can be rabid, they can be dangerous, and then also just culturally people don't have them. So like it's I've seen that too with people, even people from
Okay.
Bangladesh when they came to Vancouver, would see dogs on leashes, they'd be kind of scared because they didn't grow up with it and they're scared with it too. Because I was going to tell you, in Asia and other places of the world, like there's a fear of kind of like losing family a little bit, which is we kind of touched upon it. Whereas in the West, I think it's not a fear, but it's obviously something that people don't want. But because the bond is so tight in India and Pakistan, Bangladesh, there's a fear that they might break up. So culturally, I guess it could be different regionally. But I think also, I'm sure like for you and I, the spider and the snake fears, I'm pretty sure that's pretty global around the world. I think, unless you're like some Aussie living in the outback who doesn't care. I think
Yeah, I think
bugs are very common. Yeah,
bugs are common. In Asia, it's a lot more common to have insects as food.
yeah,
Like there's obviously food challenges in parts of Asia, and Westerners get really grossed out by the fact or the idea of consuming something crunchy, and the consistency may not appeal to them at all, and they find it really revolting and
totally.
disgusting. But then it's totally normal for someone from Asia to consume that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's probably like a cultural fear on that front.
totally. I think, I mean, who's to say whose fears are not legitimate and whose are? I think if I met anyone from around the world and they had a fear that I didn't have, I'd love to learn more about it and why and kind of break them down. Maybe through that discussion, we can cure their fears. We can help them overcome it. That'd be a cool thing.
What do you think about like scary horror films? Would you
Play on
go
our
out of your way? Do you like them? Do you watch them?
if they're on or if there's something's good, I might watch them and stuff. But I don't make an effort to do it. It's like it's not my cup of tea, personally.
Yeah,
I
for me, like it felt like something that we did in high school, or
But when you're younger,
maybe
yeah, yeah, totally,
first couple of years of university at most.
yeah,
Because I really have these like almost traumatic memories of watching the Chucky movies at someone's
yeah,
house, and I actually that maybe that's one. I have a fear of those dolls, and I also have what I don't like in these scary movies is these children
yeah,
that are used in scary ways, like
totally
in The Shining.
creepy.
Very creepy. So yeah, I really don't go out of my way for horror movies or scary
No,
movies, but like The Shining is definitely like a great movie. I
that's
would watch that. It's done
totally,
in a very like artistic way,
yeah.
but a lot of them are just like chop them up and are really graphic and disgusting.
Your analysis is spot on. When I was younger, I probably would have made more of an effort to go see it and be involved and blah 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 blah. But now I don't really do it. If it's on and other people are watching, I might watch, but it's not like something I actively go out for. But I will say that I watched recently a series on Netflix called The Haunting of Hill House, and
Okay.
it's sort of scary-ish, and so yeah, I always think about how these kid actors, after getting screwed up playing these roles at such a young age, because it is like mentally weird. But at the end of the day, it's like it's not really my thing. But that is true. Movie makers, book or authors, these people, they play on your fears, right? And so it's so interesting you said that Stephen King recently said that like there are three ways that he scares people, like in his books. And one, I'm sorry, I might get this wrong in the order, but one is like this straight up, like, like a cut off hand falls onto someone and it just scares you. The other is like just somebody kind of like jumping out, kind of startling you. And the third is like the suspense when he knows that you know that something's coming, or a movie maker like something's coming. It's usually more visual, and they can just play on that and really drag it out. And something might not really even happen, but they're kind of getting you on this like on the edge of your seat with your eyes covered. So like some people really know how to play it and really kind of get the best out of you, out of your fears. And then you meet people who are not scared at all. Like
Yeah, they're
but
not phased by it. Yeah.
they're not.
Um,
But I've never been. I'm trying to think about. Have you been ever in a real life scary situation where fear has come into play?
um, trying to think. I mean, no, I can't really say so. I mean, I have memories as a kid uh, climbing and hiking in British Columbia, and maybe in my mind it was bigger than it was, but we were like hiking along like a cliff edge,
Yeah,
and I remember getting like really frightened by the height. But I bet
yeah.
you if I went back there today, it was huge, and there's a fence or
You're
some
so
sort of retaining wall and all sorts of things. So yeah, I used to be afraid of the basement in
yeah.
my
Oh,
parents'
totally.
place. I think a lot of kids have that one, like because the boogeyman's in the basement and it's dark and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but I can't think of any like other like traumatic things. What about you?
I'm not like horror situations, but there've been a couple times like near death experiences I've had. I've had like two or three car accidents that were pretty bad. I
Yeah.
almost fell into like a river which had a really strong current and like turbulence. So I had like fears of just like that situation, but I've never been in a situation where like something horrific has happened in terms of like ghosts and goblins, or like a phobia has come into place. It's more just near death experiences, but thankfully I was okay. So it's interesting though, but like tying it back to this week and Halloween is that if I was in Canada and I had kids and it wasn't COVID, people do crazy stuff on Halloween night in our country, and so I would be very fearful that my kids would be safe. They wouldn't, do you remember there was a whole scare one year, a couple of years, where people were like, oh, there's like razor blades in the candy, and like, or like, it's a crazy. If my kids are okay, I'd be very fearful, because I was a kid who was causing some ruckus once in a while when I was a little younger on that night. Nothing like harmful, but like firecrackers and going out with friends and doing this and that. So I would be afraid too of the stupid things they do. But like now, I don't celebrate Halloween. I'm 35 years old.
Yeah.
I don't ask for candy or go out. I think we try to keep it like we've been abroad in the countries we've lived in. They do not celebrate Halloween. So I think when I go back, I think it's my time is up on that.
Yeah, when you go back to Canada, just switch the lights off, lock the doors, close the curtains, pretend like no one's home, and wait for
So,
your house to get egged.
and then leave a bowl of candy out like my mom, right? Write a
Yeah,
note,
exactly.
take one each.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, I think that's it. But I do have to say that you and I have shared a couple of fun Halloweens, because we were in Ottawa together and we used to go to a place called Saunders Farm. And do you remember Saunders Farm?
Did I go there? I don't think I went.
You went with us one year. I
I don't
totally think you
remember.
went. It was a long time ago. I'll break it down. This gentleman owns a large piece of land outside of Ottawa, and every Halloween he changes into like a haunted house and like a haunted stable ride and like hot chocolate and this, and then you kind of make a night out of it. I'm 97.75% sure you were with us one year.
It was so traumatic, I erased the memory.
There you go. You erased it, but it was fun. I mean, we did have like hot chocolate, and we went on a ride. And whenever I go through those haunted houses, like I get a little scared because people will jump out, and I fright easily. But I always think to myself, it's illegal. They can't touch you, or they're breaking the law.
Yeah, there's a limit there. Yeah.
They'll just do it like this. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting if viewers have interesting phobias that they have or that they've come across. Let us know. We'd love to hear it. It's interesting and it's fun, but I hope everyone's healthy. That's healthy and happy.
There's been enough to be afraid of this year. So I hope everyone is managing their fears as best they can.
Yes.
And staying healthy and staying safe.
Very good. I think that's a good place to leave it at. We wish everyone a happy week, a happy Halloween if you celebrate it, a happy life, and stick in there, man. It's I know it's difficult, but we're all in this together. And I think next week, Dave, it'll be interesting because we'll be just a week outside of the presidential elections, and I think we can touch more about that in the following weeks to come. But I find that just taking things a day at a time at the moment, or even a week at a time, is much more sane than thinking long term.
Yeah. I have the fear of planning ahead right now. So
there you go.
It's a good thing to do.
It's a valid fear. Anyways, Dave, thank you for presenting. I hope we were able to overcome some of our mutual fears.
I think we have, yes.
And I'll see you next week.
See you, Tosh.